In Northern Ireland, as indeed anywhere else, the future belongs to the young, teaching them so many different things. Trust, friendship, dependence upon each other is a very important part of tall ships. We've just got aboard now the Winston Churchill to talk to some of the young people who are sailing her. Karen, where are you from?
I'm from Belfast.
So what have you enjoyed most about the voyage?
The actual sailing and the making of friends.
Had you sailed before?
No, I've never actually done it. It's been quite an experience and a challenge.
Yeah, it's hard work though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, if you're doing shifts and getting up 3 o'clock in the morning, things like that.
Yeah.
You're getting about 2 hours sleep or something.
You climbed the mast?
Uh-huh. I ran along.
Have you?
Yeah, and I'm afraid of heights too.
Are you? But you've conquered that and gone up there.
Yes, I did.
Well, I've never sailed a topsail schooner before,
Yeah.
and it's just been a great experience.
Yeah.
Getting on with other people. I didn't know anybody before I came on the ship, and I made friends.
You made a lot of friends?
Yes.
Are you going to see each other after this voyage is finished?
Probably. Most
Sure.
likely.
What about you, Connor? Where are you from?
Well, I'm from Belfast myself. I never have sailed before, and I always have wanted to. I always wanted to go aloft. It's a great experience. Definitely want to do it again.
Alison Rogers, you're the development director of Sir Winston Churchill. What's your main objective in taking these young people to sea?
Well, basically, we want the youngsters to have the chance to sail on our schooners, and we have 2 schooners, the Winston Churchill and a sister ship, the Malcolm Miller. And although it's a sailing experience, what we're really all about is youth development work. So, as you can imagine, when you see down below in the half deck, perhaps, we have an awful lot of youngsters on board, 39 youngsters. They sail the ship, they are the crew, they sign on themselves, so they've got to work in a difficult environment, and it's quite a challenge for them. So it's youth work that we're really talking about here.
So what's the average age?
We have youngsters from 16 to 24, and we have that whole age range on almost every ship.
And they work just like proper sailors, up and down the mast?
Absolutely. In fact, the youngsters who came on board this voyage arrived at 5 o'clock in the evening, and by 6 o'clock we had them up and over the mast.
Did you really?
Yes, and they actually were quite enjoying it.
What do you think they learned from it?
I think really it's how to work with others, because we don't always nowadays have a very disciplined environment to work within.
Yeah.
Here, because the space is so tight and because everything has to be worked in a fairly regimented way, they get a sense of discipline, a sense of teamwork, that kind of thing.
We're now on board the beautiful ship Astrid, and with me is the captain, David Norman.
Welcome on board.
Thank you, David. Nice to talk to you. Tell us a bit about your ship.
Well, she's a bit unusual. She was built in 1918 as a sailing cargo ship in Holland, and she worked right up till 1976 as a cargo ship when she was in Lebanese ownership, and she was unfortunately involved in a drug running incident, and they had a fire on board, and she was a total loss. She was sold for scrap by the Admiralty Marshal, but rather than being scrapped, she was just dumped in the mud of the River Hamble in southern England and left to rot. And she was found by a man called Graham Nielsen, who's devoted 6 years to his life and £1 million of other people's money, creating the sail training ship Astrid you see today, which is dedicated to the service of youth.
Great. Now, your voyages are different from the others of the fleet, aren't they?
Yes, most of the other ships here, with the exception of the military ones, which are all foreign, the trainees are on board for a week or perhaps a fortnight. But we take ours for a 3-month period and do a transatlantic voyage. So we try to, instead of the sort of short, sharp shock treatment, to develop it much deeper and go further.
By the very nature of their profession, those who go down to the sea in ships spend much of their time away from home. Over the years, nostalgia for this city inspired many people in poetry and song. Recently, a group of... Walter Cronkite's reports for CBS News on major events in the last 3 decades have made him a household name. Sam McCawtrey is one of Ulster's best-known broadcasters. Something else they have in common: a love of the sea and tall ships. Walter, you covered many famous news events, world-famous news events in your time. If you were covering this one, it would be a subject very dear to your heart, wouldn't it?
Oh, indeed. I think the tall ships are so romantic, and they touch everybody's heart. It's amazing. Around the world, wherever the tall ships visit, they bring out millions of people, literally millions, to see them. There's something, I suppose, it's primordial that coming out of the ooze, we have this feeling about the sea.
Sam, I know you've got the sea in your blood. As a small boy, you used to creep on board these square riggers, didn't you?
Yeah, and they were working ships too. They weren't for decoration or anything, and they weren't for training. They earned their keep. They were owned by a guy called Ericsson, a Finn, and they came into Belfast. They came into most of the major ports in those days, it's over 50 years, in fact, since I sat on the side of one of these ships, and the sailors in those days on board the ships were very understanding of little boys. I imagine kids would be chased off them nowadays, you know, but they used to bring us on board and show us all around.
There's some rare characters about too then, weren't there?
Well, in the area where I was born and brought up, just near here, in the dockside area, people either worked by the sea here as dockers or went to sea. My father went to sea, my grandfather, great-grandfather, and there were poor people, but there was no such thing as a division. There was no such thing as religious divisions. It was totally, and right up to the outbreak of these troubles and beyond it, the dockside people never understood the nature of a division because of religion. My father brought members of his crew up into our house, and they were from Dublin, Athlone, they were from the Catholic side of Belfast. They all sat in our house drinking bottles of stout and singing songs. Wonderful community.
Great. Walter, I know you have a magnificent yacht. Do you find sailing relaxing?
Oh, completely. I can really turn off the rest of the world when I get aboard the boat.
Yes.
We have all the modern communication facilities on there, but I'll be darned if I'm going to let people know how to reach me by boat. I can reach them in case of emergency, but that's, I hope, not very often. The rest of the time, it really it does, when you sail away from land, you leave it behind. And I'm kind of a Walter Mitty character anyway, if you know who he is. And I've got a great imagination. Whenever I leave the dock, I've got a boat of tea for Southampton, or I'm off to intercept the French fleet somewhere, somewhere off the Martinique.
Smuggling, perhaps.
Yeah, leading in the grain race.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Finally, to both of you, today, unfortunately, docks are empty. Do you think the tall ships will ever come back?
It'll take some sort of technological breakthrough. They're working on some sort of brand new thinking on sail power, and with green issues and this sort of thing taking precedence, it may well happen, but it certainly won't be in our time, you know.
You'd like to see them back?
I'd agree with that. I think they're making some very superb technological progress in rotor blades and things of that kind for utilizing wind power. The Japanese actually have 2 or 3 commercial ships that are cutting down on their fuel consumption by use of sail, but that is modern sail, rotor sail. But as you say, it's going to be a very long time. As with everything else in fuel consumption and conservation, it's going to depend on the price of fuel, and as petrochemicals become more and more expensive, then we'll really begin to find alternate means of transport, and I do think that there will be wind utilization at that time, probably.
There was a phase between sail and steam when there was a vessel known as half sail, half steam, you know, and carried sails aft and an engine as well. And I have photographs of this, my father's album. They were still going when he was a young man. And I was just wondering whether we might pass through that phase on the way back to sail again. Yeah. Could well happen.
Would be a bad idea, wouldn't it? Yeah. Well, thanks for talking to us. It's a pleasure meeting you, sir.
Good to be with you.